Well, hey there YouTube, it's bbe2150, and this video I'm going to be talking about the powered mixer that we put together. So this is a cheap briefcase thingy, and it's got an MP3. There's a power amp inside of it, a 3-channel power amp, so you can plug speakers in here. This is the power connector. It takes 48 volts, so we run this off of a lithium-ion e-bike battery. There's these two voltage regulator. Actually, they're called step down. It's a buck. So these two batteries here power the it's like 8.5 volts or so, and that powers the MP3. Then this pack and this pack are two 12 volts, and each one of those 12 volts hits these two. Everything's fused. There's a fuse for the power amp, there's a fuse for the MP3, and a couple of fuses for these V-regs. These bucks bust down this 12 volts to 9 because this mixer has spots for little 9-volt batteries. You can run this mixer off of two 9-volt batteries. It'll run for about 3 hours before the batteries die. So I built those larger lithium-ion packs, which were 12 volts, and then stepped them down to 9. And that enables us to run this powered mixer all day. Now the e-bike battery is like this big. It's what powers an electronic bicycle. So if you can imagine, you know, that they have like 20-mile range or whatever it is. It's enough power in that battery to run this amplifier all day. Because we've been out, we've tested it, and it worked fine. Here's the amplifier, the power amp, and this was about, I think they're about $40, maybe $45, and this is a 8495, I think is the chip number. I forget. I had a real hard time. We ended up getting a bad board, and it was a hassle to get a return on it. But yeah, that board is 150 per channel for the satellite speakers, and the sub is 300 watts. So we've got two 10s in a cabinet for the sub. It's a bass cab. It's called a GK Galen Kruger Neo 210, and it's a really efficient, lightweight, but good little subwoofer. You know, to play the bass guitar through. And then we got 8-inch satellite speakers. They're good. The one is a DAS. It's a DAS. It's a German speaker company, and it's they both have compression driver horns. So this is our little PA. It's new. We worked up to this, trying some different things, and this is where we've like hit the wall. We're not going to be going any further. We took it out, we used it, and the one thing that surprised me was it really wasn't that bright. Like for one, there's the built-in British EQs on this Behringer. Normally when I crank the high end on a mixer, there's like too much high end. But I also thought about it, and you know, usually there'll be an EQ. There'll be a separate EQ on the mixer. Sometimes there's even outboard EQ. Or there'll be a built-in graphic EQ for the main mix. And this is lacking here. We don't have that. So I began to think, well, what would be an easy way to remedy that? I looked, and I discovered that eBay, China, is making these. This one's called an XH-A906 front tone board bbe2150. Now the bbe2150 is a chip. And it actually is an integrated circuit chip. I know nowadays everyone if it passes voltage or signal, it's a chip. People will call a pencil a chip. It's just don't get me started. This is an actual bbe2150. Now, what this is, back in the mid-70s, Aphex, this company came out with this thing called the Oral Exciter. And what it was a piece of rack mount gear that sold like wildfire. They all went in every studio, and all of a sudden the mixes became a lot brighter. And supposedly it's time cut. There's a lot of people arguing about this. BBE hid this technology. You were unable to purchase it. You had to rent it from them initially for many years. Then it came out in rack mount form, and everybody went and bought it because previous to that you had to rent it. Eventually they started putting them into stomp boxes, and now they've put it into one tiny chip. So I looked it up, and people said on the bass player forum, they said, well, it's really not it's not ideal for bass, for your bass amp. Some guys liked it on their rig. They really did. It in the chip form, they've got all different ones. They've got some with an EQ. They've got some with a master volume. They have some with just switches. They have some with just jumpers. And that's what I ended up with, the jumper version for this. But basically, the cheap version you can get here, the basic rock bottom version the one that I bought, it takes 9 to 18 volts. So I'm going to be running it at 12. And you have a bypass, so you can turn it on or off with one of the jumpers. Then there is a choice to give either a 6 dB boost on the high and a 6 dB boost on the low, or a 9 dB boost on the high and the low, depending on whether or not. So there's 3 of the jumpers, and you can have it on, and then your choice of 6 or 9 for the high and the low band. Now, BBE claims that this chip recreates the effect of the Aphex Oral Exciter, or the BBE Sonic Maximizer, or the Sonic Stop. There's all kinds of names for basically the same thing, and there's a lot of arguing. If you look up on the forums, there's a lot of people who do not believe that there is time compensation, because what the company, that the original device, what they claimed that it did was create a delay on the high end because the frequencies move at a different rate. So this made it so all of the sound hits your ears at the same time. Isn't that crazy? And there's all kinds of reasons why that shouldn't work, and why this, what they had talked about, that people believe that it's snake oil. I don't know. All I know is it's a plug-in. So I grabbed the plug-in and installed it, and I've been playing with the plug-in, and I've used it certain times when I need that treble boost, a little clearer signal, and then also the other side of it is a little bit goes a long way, because if you hear a lot of these older recordings from that period in the 80s where there's too much treble, you'll know how that will create ear fatigue, or you won't even want to listen to it in the first place because there's too much treble effect. So I'm more than likely, I think this is going to solve my problem. I mean, I have the EQ, so if there's too much treble, let's say I run it with the jumpers off, so it's just boosting at 6 dB on the high and low, giving me that exactly how I would set a graphic EQ if I had one on this. Like, this board is lacking that. And if it had it, let's say it was a 3-band, I would beep boop bump the bass and beep boop bump the treble, and that's what I would do. That's my jam. That's my EQ. Now, if you look, if this sounds like something interesting, you know, you could this. If you're into home audio and DIY, this is something I would recommend you check out. The one that has the EQ built on it is really appealing to me. And the reason I didn't get that is because they have one that's, not only is it the BBE Sonic Stomp or Aphex Oral Exciter, the chip, the BBE2150, but it's also a 3-band EQ which is run by a couple of NE5532, which are pretty good, decent op amps. So that's probably the one to get. I think that's about $15. The board I put in here, and we're going to take a look at it, was $8. Now, getting back to talking about the nitty gritty here and me, like, I don't know. You know, a guy that I used to work with who wear really cut from two different cloths, he had one. And I was like, what is that thing? And he was like, well, it's, you know, he got it used and he didn't really use it. He had it in his rack. And I think he ended up phasing it out or maybe selling it to Guitar Center. But what I read in the bass player forum, these guys said, you put it on a PA. That's what this thing is really good for. It's not for putting on your bass amp or your guitar amp, or you put it on the PA, on the master bus mix, and then it does what it's supposed to do. And that makes sense to me. So I am hoping that, and I might even run it with the jumper, like not the bass boost but the treble boost, because that's really what I'm trying to accomplish here. The bass frequencies were good with the bass. As it is, it's going to be boosting them 6 dB, so that's going to mean I'm going to have to adjust here with my EQ. So ultimately, as you can see, there really isn't room to be throwing a bunch of knobs on this or even switches, so I went with the idea of let's mount it inside and go for a set and forget idea. Here are the jumpers. Here's the circuit here. Here's the jumpers. I could solder wires onto those and run them up into here to install some toggle switches. And if the bypass works, I mean, if you look here, there's nothing on this board. It's, here's the power connection. I'm just going to actually test that before I fire it up. But if you look, there's, it's just the BBE chip. That's it. JRC, Japan Radio Corporation, bbe2150 AD. There it is. There's no other chips, just a couple of capacitors. Single mounting hole. I used double-sided tape on the bottom, and then it came with some cables, which I used a little double-sided tape to hold everything in place. The DC, it came with the DC cable, and I needed to extend that, so I used this black and white here, black and yellow, and it's coming up off of the toggle with hard 12 volts, and then grabbing the ground off of this after the fuse. So hopefully it won't cause any interference, because there really isn't any more room in here for an additional battery pack. I just as well could have bought a guitar pedal chassis and wired this up with a pair of stereo 1/4-inch jacks, and then it could be, hey, do you need when you need that, I could put inject it in whatever signal, run it through the cabling. But the idea behind this is that it's a remote. We like to have the least amount of messing around and external stuff. So if you just throw it down and it works and it does the job that it's supposed to do by goosing the high end, is going to make me a happy boy. So I apologize, I'm unable to test this. I got a late start. I was playing Factorio. I was a bad boy. And it's like about 11 p.m. So I'm going to test it tomorrow, and I'll let you guys know what it sounds like. If it turns out it doesn't work, I'm out $8, and again, I will uninstall it and build it into a chassis, and then I'll have a BBE. Now, the concept that this is doing this time delaying stuff on different frequencies, a lot of people never bought into that. A lot of people said this is just an EQ. The verdict is out on it, but the idea that they've shrunk it down into a 14-pin, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know. It's 16 pin maybe chip. The idea that they could compensate in like 30 milliseconds on the high end, like on a stereo in a one chip, you know, we're not there yet technology wise. So I'm almost going to say that, yeah, that for me that seals the deal, and I don't really believe that they're doing that. Be really interesting. What I really need to do is look up and I apologize for not doing this, it didn't dawn on me, look up the data sheet for that chip and see, do they give a block diagram of what's going on inside the bbe2150? Because I want to believe, but I don't. All right, you guys, thank you for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Hopefully the weather will cool off. I've got this torn rotator cuff or whatever I did to my shoulder, and I got a bone spur, and then my herniated disc. I'm just an absolute mess. So, yeah, I gotta heal up with this elbow, but hopefully we'll be bringing some live music to you guys soon from the remote through the BBE Sonic Stomp, and peace.